an affront on Levesque, but it was interesting because so many people did, and I do understand why they did, and I can't even tell you it's not true. I don't know, because it's not something I've really investigated or anything. I'm looking at the same way everybody else is, kind of from afar. And they're going to have different ideas, and they're both very, very powerful people. Levesque is their hands-on. Levesque's job's a super, super hard job, and he's getting, at least from a hardcore standpoint, he's getting a lot of criticism because WrestleMania was not as good as I think most expected to be going in. I mean, I looked at that lineup and I thought, two pretty damn good shows. And when it was over, it's kind of like two pretty damn great matches and two or three other really good matches. Yeah. But as shows, the first night, if you didn't have that trios match, I would say was a bad show, or three-way. And the second night started out so good because of the first three matches, and then at the end, that main event just didn't deliver at all. So it was, it was okay. It was, whatever. It wasn't a bad show. But both nights, as far as like, if you asked me how good these matches would be beforehand, I would have expected most of them to be better than they were, or many of them to be better. Some of it having to do with, I can't even say why, because it's not like anybody was out there sloughing off. Some were, I don't say shorter. Well, I mean, there are a couple that were shorter than they needed to be. But yeah, so it's like, so now he's getting heat, and I'm sure he's sitting there going like, we just hit every freaking record in the book. We said every record in the book, and I'm looking on social media, and they're all blasting me, and it's like, that's why he's out there going like, you guys don't know what you're talking about. But to an extent, these people do know what you're talking about. Number one, it is about their entertainment. You know what I mean? And it was a disappointing two shows, even though, again, even me as a fan, when it was coming in the week of the show, I'm going like, I mean, I'm not that, I didn't think the build was that great, and it's not just because it went 2 weeks longer. I just didn't think the build was that great. I thought the matches would be great, and then this, some of them were, but most weren't. And and that is his job. But at the same time, it's like, the name WrestleMania sells itself now, and so you can overcome a bad build or an average build. And again, when I was thinking back, like, it really does feel like I'm not as excited as I was last year. But what was the big excitement last year? The whole fans taking over and switching the booking, which ended up being great, and Cody being such a good babyface, and Dwayne just being like a really uncontrollable, egotistical, out of this world, like not heel that like nobody could stop, and he could do anything he wanted and do these like 25-minute promos on social media and then come on TV and do another 25 minutes, screwing up the whole show, but drawing high ratings in the process. Yeah. And it's just like we had that uncontrollable vibe because Dwayne's going to do whatever he wants. And we didn't have that this year. This year was very controlled. I think I wish seeing Cody had gotten out of control after that. The angle was great. I thought the original angle was great. I thought the follow-up, and it's not because they couldn't mention Dwayne. I just thought that the follow-up idea, they didn't want him to fight. I think they didn't want him to fight a lot in hindsight because I think that they knew that if they did too much physicality, he would be exposed, and that may have been the deal. Where we don't want Cena to get hurt. Number one, because that's screwed up. And number two, if they're out there and it's more than just Cody gives him the crossroads and he takes a bump, maybe he'll get exposed because. What was the thing when you were watching in the first 5 to 10 minutes of the match? I mean, the overriding emotion is when I saw it, is that, oh my God, it's like, John's not the same. He's just not.
He wasn't the same. It was almost like, oh, I'm a heel. That just means I don't really have to do anything. And almost like expecting Cody to do all of this. I don't know. It was so weird. Okay, so let me start at the beginning. I was very negative about this story. After the original angle, I didn't really want Cena. I didn't think Cena turning heel was the best thing, but when I saw the reaction and I saw my friends and my kids going like, hey, I was like, okay, there's interest here. Good job. But the follow-up, I didn't like it. I didn't like the fact that we were basically having verbal debates for weeks and weeks and weeks. And then when we get to the match, I was watching it with everyone in the suite, and I was like, okay, this feels like one of the most disappointing, overpromised, undelivered main events that I've ever seen in WrestleMania. And so I kind of did the thing in my head.
And ever. I mean, I would just say WrestleMania. I would say as far as something so big off of that great turn, and then the match was just like, I mean, it was a so-so match at best with a bad finish. I mean, it's it was like Hogan Sting. If you think about it, I mean, Hogan Sting was built up bigger because they had the year-long build. And then the match came, and I just remember Hogan Sting. And when that thing was over, it was like, oh my God, after all that build, this was such a nothing. I think that this didn't have as much build, and I actually think it was a better match than Hogan Sting, but not by much. But but again, the same flat feeling when it's over. It's like something so big and so successful, and then we actually get to the payoff, right? And the payoff's nothing.
Because I was at 2 other WrestleManias where I had a similar feeling. Triple H Randy Orton WrestleMania 25 was one, and Triple H Roman Reigns WrestleMania 32. I felt very similarly like, this thing is super flat. This is not the ending that they wanted, and thankfully, at least in WrestleMania 25, you had the Shawn Michaels and Undertaker match, because that's what everyone sort of.
That's what everyone remembers now. Yeah.
So getting back to the match, I was like, okay, I was so down on this. I need to rewatch it just to kind of hone in on, maybe when you watch it with that big party. I also had my phone, and the Warriors were playing, so I was like, okay, let me focus on this match. I actually thought it was worse watching it the second time around.
Really? Okay, because I've not watched it the second time.
John Cena's stomps were terrible. I mean, he's never had great punches, but as a heel, they were even worse. He did like 2 double axe handles in a row off the top rope or the middle rope, and then just getting to that whole thing with the thing that stands out more in the rewatch is poor Cody. He had to play dead for Travis Scott to come out.
Oh, wait, way too long.
He had to play dead for the belt shot, which took forever to cover. And this is after him kicking out of him hitting the corner pad. Well, they pulled the pad off, so him hitting that little ring twice, and then the AA, he kicks out of that, but Cena hits him with the belt shot, and 20 seconds later walks over to pin him, and he's out. And so that didn't make him look great either. So from that perspective, I thought it was worse. And I don't know, they've done such a great strategic job of protecting Cody Rhodes as a babyface, and it was almost like they kind of threw it all out the window just to get this reaction that they wanted.
Well, we'll see. I mean, they're on a roll. Their business is good. I mean, we're not going to see any chinks in the business, if there is any, going to be any for 6-8 weeks, and then we'll see. But I mean, I just think that the whole idea of WWE is very, very over right now. So they can get away with, I mean, it's interesting because it's like, I've been watching of late, and I just think like it's weird because it's like WWE. It feels from a viewing standpoint, from like atmosphere, everything like feels so strong. So many fans and the great production and everything like that. And and that's again, to an average person, it feels so major league. It's going to be more than AEW, no matter what AEW does. That the AEW's biggest problem is that WWE is strong. But when I watch both shows now, especially of late, it's just like, man, AEW's like way better, but the stories are way better. That's the thing. It's like everyone's stories, this and stories that. And it's like, AEW's got all of these things building for the All In show that I can see coming. It's like the booking is better, and it's like after years of this guy can't book, it's like it's better than the other guy, who is a great booker. He just, he has his pressures too. He's got to, there's just a lot of things going on always with them. But I just thought like it's like these collision shows. They're just easy to watch 2 hour shows, and then I watch SmackDown. And it's just 3 hours, and it's not bad, but it just drags. And then the Raw is like, it's the promos are good and some of the angles are good, but the people, I think part of it also is the people are not there for the wrestling matches. Like WWE, it's so weird because you have these, it's very, very hot, and the fans are hot, but they're hot for, I just compare it, again to Friday Night Arena in Mexico. And it's like those fans are in the wrestling match, and AEW fans are in the wrestling match too. But they're small numbers, so you kind of go, well, only the hardcore. But then the Arena in Mexico, it's a great number, and they're so into it, and they're as casual as they're not even fans. They're as casual can be, and they're just getting turned on because it's just like it's a product that's super entertaining in the ring, and WWE is still clinging to a certain mentality of wrestling, and maybe just teaching their audience that the match doesn't matter anyway, and the wins and losses don't matter. So therefore, until we have the thing at the end, whether it's the run-in or the tons of, big spots, and then everyone does this is awesome thing, and none of it matters until that point. So it's the matches don't feel strong until, the last few minutes. I mean, one of the things that I was so impressed with the Roman Reigns match, because they went like 32, 33 minutes, was everyone knew nothing mattered until Paul Heyman does a spot, and then that's going to be the finish, right? And that crowd was so hot for the whole match.
Yep.
But at the same time, what were they doing the whole match? They were doing everything that everyone criticizes everyone else does. They did nothing but GTS, curb stomp, spear, Superman punch, over and over and over again. It's just we have to give you those few moves that to keep you engaged, because it's all about it's funny, it's all for a company that tries to tell you moves don't matter. I watch these shows and it's kind of like all that matters to these people when the match is going on is the moves. It's not the match story in most cases. Some cases you can get away with it, but most cases it's just they're waiting for the moves too. You're just not giving them. So you have the quiet match until the the finish, and they're all talented. I mean, that's the one thing. That's I think another reason why I was so disappointed overall in WrestleMania is like it's not like in the past where you have these WrestleMania matches and I look at them going in and it's like, well, this one's gonna suck and this one's gonna suck and then this one's gonna be good. You know what I mean? It's kind of like what you expect. It's like because they're guys that are just not that good, but they're over, right? This year it's like they're all good, but it just didn't gel for a variety of different reasons, except for those those two matches, and then a couple of other couple that were there where they needed to be, but not most.
I will say though, Elimination Chamber was really good.
A lot of their pay-per-views are really good. Yeah.
And it just feels like it was like 7 weeks ago, so we were waiting for this double WrestleMania. So I think, like, if I think about kind of the build to this WrestleMania, I thought Elimination Chamber was like kind of like the perfect show to build into WrestleMania. WrestleMania just didn't deliver, and some of the TV was not great as well. But if you look at the tale of two bookers, Tony Khan had the highest of the highs and then the lows, and then trying to come back from the lows. It feels
hard. That's hard.
It feels really, really organized right now. It looks like he has a system of, he's probably could still promote a little earlier than he does, but at least for the most part, you got matches, you got things that are interesting, that are being promoted. So for him to kind of hopefully maybe learn from failures, and that's how he's growing and doing these things for now. Yeah, I do think that it's sort of refreshed. Dynamite and Collision feel refreshed to me, almost like he needed a break, didn't take a break, but now he feels better, and now he feels like he's ready to go.
You know what maybe? It's not football season.
Well, they just did the draft yesterday, so
that's true.
Season again.
I know. So that's
and they made the biggest trade out of all of the teams in the draft yesterday. They traded up to get the second pick, and they got the Travis Hunter, who's an incredible player. But I wonder if he's going to ask him to do some stuff for the show, which would be really cool if Travis Hunter was doing a promo or something. But anyways, to kind of fast forward to Triple H now, think about where he is, where it's almost like a bad idea for them to take risks because their audience is so hot for things. It's almost like, how long do you want to ride this tale of, because they have a lot of equity. I thought the Las Vegas audience was very kind to some of the stuff that was on that show, and I think it's because there's a built-in equity that he's had over the last couple of years. And also, if you're paying $2,000 for wrestling tickets, you don't want to have a bad time. So there's some of that.
You're gonna convince yourself that it's really not that bad, and everything you're paying that much money. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting too. I am fascinated by the fact, like, getting almost 60,000 or maybe just over 60,000, whatever the real number is. It's probably a couple, it's probably a couple thousand less than they say. So probably almost 60. That building 2 nights in a row is very impressive. But to do it at those prices, you know what I mean? That's really impressive. It's like, and they've gotten away with it, and and I mean, it's interesting because I'm getting the same stuff that I used to get with UFC. Where people just complain the prices are too high, and they sell out. You know what I mean? It's like, I know I explained these lessons so many times because they were drummed into my head in the 90s. That like, and the one I really saw it before my eyes was I was in New York for the Conor McGregor Eddie Alvarez fight. Okay, I don't know if I've ever told you this. So I'm on the subway, right? And there's these very pretty women, and they're in their, I'm gonna say early to mid 20s, and they're just bragging, my boyfriend's taking me to the UFC, and it's $1,200 a ticket. And that's, and the same Brad's been telling me this stuff, before he passed, for decades, right? And it was like, there it is right in front of my eyes. You know what I mean? It's like, if it was 400, she wouldn't be so excited. You know what I mean? And so, now it's like, it becomes a prestige thing when that happens, and they can really take advantage of it. And they learned, the thing that led to these ticket prices going up for people who don't know was the success of StubHub and SeatGeek and these other places, because they would get these tickets, and they were actually underpriced, and they would sell them for so much more, and people would buy them. So that became the ticket one. I mean, I remember with AEW was the Orlando show. I rarely have gotten this, but StubHub, one outlet, StubHub, okay, they made $803,000 profit on a show that Tony didn't even gross $803,000. Because and it wasn't even that many. Like, it's not like half the building went to scalpers, but a large, 30% did, and they marked it up so much. And that's when I kind of look and go, like, why is StubHub making all that money and not AEW?
Yeah.
And it's the same thing with WWE. So now WWE, whatever it was, they do $20 million houses in a row, which is really, even by today's standards, that's really impressive.
Let's talk about the AAA and WWE. I guess they just, what's the company? The Philippe? Is that Philippe?
So it's a weird thing, and it all hasn't come out. I had kind of known about Philippe and the machinations of this for a long, long time, and then it happened. And so they're partners. But WWE is going to be controlling and running. Philippe is it's just a group that's going to put money in, which is interesting. Because why would WWE need a partner?
Right.
But yet there we are. Because certainly TKO doesn't need a partner to buy this thing, but somehow it's there, and there must be a strategic reason, and I actually don't know what that is. But they're going to be in control. Now the sale doesn't go through until quarter 3, so that's the summer, July or later. But everything is going to be different. As far as what this means long term, we have to watch it play out. Some of the talent, if you work for AAA, here's the thing: it's not going out of business. Although you don't know for the long term, you know what I mean? Because they may throw their hands up and just say we're going to absorb this, and that wouldn't shock me at all, a year from now. But you're going to get paid. You're probably going to get paid more. They're going to have more money to upgrade TV, to upgrade, certainly first. And unless they pull the plug on it as a separate brand. But at the same time, it's like there is kind of no need for a separate brand, even running in Mexico, for the same reason there's no need for Tony to have an ROH brand, because the reality is WWE in Mexico means more than AAA in Mexico. So why are you going to run a bunch of shows and call AAA? That's the logic. But right now, I think that they think that we're going to have this. I think that they want to. I think that they want to run all of wrestling. It's one thing Vince never could do, and now I think that's what Nick and Paul want to do. And so to do that, you can't get rid of the indies, but you can dominate every market. And right now, Mexico is not a market that they dominate. And I think that's the feeling. I think they're going to try the same thing in Japan, which will be a tougher nut to crack. But New Japan isn't doing so great that it's impossible long term. All those European groups, they all went down. All those American groups, many of which were very, very strong, in the 80s, they all went down. So it's like, like when people do the Arena Mexico thing, it's like, my God, what they had. But at the same time, it's like, look, like Jarrett and Bill Watts and Jim Crockett, and Vern Gagne weren't doing great business when Vince expanded. And 2 years later, none of them were.
So
3 years.
I feel like I've read, probably since I started subscribing, like every 3 or 4 years, there's a version of the story of how AAA wants to come to the U.S. and
for 20 years, yeah.
And we talked to Conan a couple of years ago. We talked about him, and he was talking about, we have these ideas, and Netflix. He had mentioned Netflix. And I guess my question is since you've heard this over and over, would this have been the time that you thought a deal would have happened? Like, is there anything special about where we are today in wrestling that makes this the time to do it?
A couple things. Number one, the success of CMLL. Again, Vince isn't there, but this company is still built on the fingerprints of Vince. When an example is when New Japan ran its, I don't know if it was the first show at the Tokyo Dome, it might have been the second or the third, but I was writing for the National. And, I think one of the Tokyo Dome shows did great business. And I wrote about it in my national column. And, I heard from them, and it was just like, it was really like they wanted especially because the National was like all the movers and shakers in New York, right? We're reading it. It was like the cool thing to read for the business people and the sports business people. And WWE's rep was, Vince is a genius and nobody can do wrestling and all this. And then all of a sudden, it's like they're reading about these guys are drawing bigger crowds than Vince is. And I just remember like they really didn't want me to talk about not the national people, but the WWE people really didn't want me to talk about New Japan Pro Wrestling's Tokyo Dome shows because it exposed something that all the big business people they dealt with, they don't know any that Vince McMahon created wrestling. They don't know that his father drew big, and they don't know that Crockett drew big or anything like that. They sure as hell don't know anything's going on in Japan. It's like Vince is the genius, and so it's kind of like, oh, other people are doing this too, and maybe even bigger and better. Even like I think I don't think this was Vince, but someone in the company who was right under Vince, even called me up and did, it's not fair to do that Japanese stuff. And it's like, why? And it's like because like we have to sell tickets to wrestling fans. They sell tickets to corporations that then give the tickets to the people that work there, which is true. They did do that. It's like as does the NFL, right? And it's like, and I would go like, well, don't you think that it's really cool that they're mainstream level that you're not, to where they can get corporations to buy all these tickets? And now that happens at WWE shows too. But it's like they're trying to tell me it's not fair because they're not directly selling tickets to individual consumers. They're going to the car company and hey, sponsor us and buy 1,000 tickets for your employees and we'll discount the price a little bit and you can pass up to your employees and they're all going to be happy they get to go see the Tokyo Dome show. That is what they did. That's how they drew those crowds in those days, was because they were so in mainstream that you could do that like the NFL does with people. But it's so you have that. But anyway, so going back to that, so I think the success of CMLL and number 2, and probably more important, is AEW going to New Mexico and AEW and CMLL working together. I think it's one of those things where if we, they're getting, if AEW goes to Arena Mexico and sells out, all of a sudden it's like, are we going to be number 1 in Mexico? Because they want to be number 1 everywhere. And with CMLL, it's like, okay, they're not like a big television thing, but my God, they're like an institution there, and we want to be, they want to be number 1 there. So I thought like, and again, like 7 days ago, there was no show in Los Angeles. There was no show in Monterey. They all of a sudden popped up after, like days after AEW announces the Arena Mexico show and the tour and everything like that. So I don't find that coincidental. Because this is wrestling. So I think as far as like timing, I think that I know that there were talks for a long time. The talks predated anything AEW did. I think the announcement coming out of nowhere, because like none of us knew the announcement was coming. We all knew there were talks, and I just figured it would drag on at some point, close, and that there would be something. But I think the announcement and the announcement of those 2 shows, that I think that's not anything other than we got to get this out right now.
So we have a question from, let's see here, who's this from? It is from Jake in Windy City. That's a 2-parter. I can actually answer the first part. Will you guys release the live mailbag show from Vegas for us subscribers? I know they recorded it, and I know that one of the things about selling tickets for this event is, we're not going to then release the show immediately. Like, if you want to listen to it, then you should be there. At some point down the line, will they be released? Quite possibly. I don't think anytime soon. And then he said, will AAA eventually cease? Go ahead. Will they cease as a brand?
I think it's very possible for the reasons I brought up earlier in the show. I don't think it'll be anytime soon, but down the line when they look and go like, if we run shows and we call it AAA, we're not going to draw as well in Mexico and the United States as if we run shows and call it WWE. And once they figure that out, and they will, they may cease it. Although I mean, I guess you could say the same with NXT, but it does give WWE. The one thing is it does give WWE another thing to put on the table to sell to streamers or television stations or something like